Okay, picture this. It's the middle of the night, January 3rd, 2026. The world is asleep. And then the news breaks, something that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. A sitting head of state has just been captured by a foreign military. This is the incredible story of Operation Absolute Resolve, the U.S. raid that snatched Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So how on earth did we get here? And what in the world happens now? Let's get into it.
Right after the operation, this is the message that comes blasting out of the White House. And look, this isn't just some throwaway line. This was a declaration. It was the White House framing this mission as way more than just an arrest. They were basically announcing a whole new era of American foreign policy.
And there it is, the core. Absolutely stunning fact. In what was basically a lightning strike on the Capitol, U.S. Special Forces hit a military base, took President Maduro and his wife into custody, and had them on a plane out of the country before most people even knew what was happening. Their destination? A federal courthouse in New York.
Now, just look at the sheer scale of this thing. We're talking about some of the most advanced military tech on the planet. F-35s, those are the stealth fighters that can slip past radar completely undetected. They basically switched off Venezuela's air defenses before the Venezuelans could even react. The whole thing was over in just 2 hours and 20 minutes, a textbook case of modern shock and awe.
So an operation this big doesn't just happen overnight. This was a slow burn, a series of moves over several months that laid the groundwork and paved the road straight to Caracas. Let's walk through how it all went down.
It all kicked off behind closed doors in October with a secret legal opinion. And this was the key. It relabeled drug traffickers as enemy combatants. That might sound like legal jargon, but it completely changed the rules of the game. Suddenly, the U.S. military had the green light for actions that followed, bombing suspected drug boats, and then parking a full aircraft carrier strike group right off Venezuela's coast. Each step was a deliberate escalation.
And let's be really clear about the military situation here. This was not a fair fight, not even close. It was like putting a welterweight boxer in the ring with the heavyweight champion of the world. Venezuela had some Russian-made air defenses, sure, but they were just completely outmatched and outclassed by the technology and the sheer number of U.S. forces pointed right at them.
So that brings us to the biggest question of all, right? Why? What was the real motive here? And depending on who you ask, you get two very different answers.
Officially, the White House said this was all about fighting narco-trafficking. It was a message tailor-made to appeal to Americans who are, really worried about the opioid crisis. The goal was to frame this foreign invasion as an issue of safety right here at home.
But critics immediately called foul. They said the drug war was just a smokescreen. The main counterargument, and you heard it from people all over the world, was that this was really just a brazen, illegal grab for Venezuela's oil, which, by the way, are the largest proven reserves on the planet.
And honestly, the critics got a lot of ammunition from the president's own mouth. In a press conference right after the raid, he was already talking about U.S. oil companies moving in to fix the infrastructure. For his opponents, this was the smoking gun. How can you say it's not about oil when you're literally talking about oil?
All of this fits into a bigger picture that people started calling the Don Road Doctrine. You got to remember the original Monroe Doctrine from the 1800s, which basically told Europe to stay out of the Americas. Well, this is like a supercharged version of that. It's reasserting U.S. dominance not just against outside powers, but against anyone in the hemisphere, even sovereign countries, if it's seen as a U.S. interest.
Now, capturing a foreign leader is shocking, to say the least. But is it unprecedented? Well, as it turns out, no. There's actually a historical playbook for this exact kind of thing, one the U.S. seems to be following to the letter.
The similarities here are just wild. You've got a Latin American leader, you've got drug trafficking charges, and you've got a full-scale U.S. invasion to bring him to justice in an American court. The 1989 invasion of Panama really was the dress rehearsal for what just happened in Venezuela.
And the Noriega case was huge because it forced U.S. courts to answer some really tricky questions. I mean, can you legally just grab a foreign leader and put him on trial? Does he even have rights? The legal precedent set back then literally created the playbook that the U.S. is using right now.
So what did that case actually establish? Well, think of it like this. First, it decided that being a president is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for criminal charges. Second, even if you're captured in combat and are technically a prisoner of war, you can still be put on trial for crimes you committed before the fighting started. So yeah, the Noriega case basically built a legal bridge to a U.S. courtroom, and now Maduro is being walked right across it.
Okay, so taking out a leader is one thing, but figuring out what comes next? That's a whole other ballgame.
With Maduro gone, Venezuela is basically a powder keg, and the whole world is holding its breath to see who lights the next match.
As you can imagine, the global reaction was instant, and it was all over the place. Big players in Latin America like Mexico and Brazil were furious. They called it a blatant violation of sovereignty. Meanwhile, U.S. allies were a lot more supportive, but it just goes to show how deeply this action divided the international community.
So, what's the immediate plan? According to the White House, the United States is going to temporarily run the country. Yeah, that's a hugely controversial idea, and it's already raising all sorts of alarms about an occupation. But the administration is insisting that it's just a temporary measure to keep things stable.
With the presidential palace suddenly empty, there's a huge power vacuum, and now you've got this dangerous scramble to fill it. On one side, you have the actual democratically elected opposition. In another corner, you have the loyalists from the old regime, who are not going to give up power quietly. And then, there's the wild card, a potential U.S.-backed government. It's a mess.
So experts are basically seeing three ways this could play out. The best-case scenario, Maduro's inner circle cuts a deal and peacefully hands power to the opposition. Another possibility is that there's a secret deal already in place with parts of the Venezuelan military. But then there's the nightmare scenario. The state completely collapses and the country descends into a brutal civil war between regime loyalists, gangs, and drug cartels. The human cost of that would be just catastrophic.
So at the end of the day, this was a massive, monumental gamble. Did the U.S. just surgically remove a dictator and clear the way for a stable democracy? Or did it just light the fuse on another endless conflict, right in its own backyard? We just don't know yet. But one thing is for sure, the world is watching.